This is Alexa with the Clinician's Atelier and founder of Care Identity. I'm super excited to have Dr. Jade Norris on our podcast today.
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. So I'm Dr. Jade Norris. I'm from Las Vegas, and I've been saying I want to be a doctor since I was a little girl and discovered direct primary care during residency and met mentors that opened straight from residency. So that became my goal. We're coming up on our 3-year anniversary of Nspire Primary Care, our membership medical practice, our direct primary care medical practice in Las Vegas. Our mission is to help our members transition to a healthier lifestyle and a healthier weight and prevent and reverse chronic disease with really high quality healthcare. So it's just been a pleasure to have high quality healthcare with the direct primary care model in my home community and to see a medical desert finally have some quality healthcare in the Valley. So it's been my joy to grow on that journey, and I'm thankful for that.
That's awesome. So tell me a little bit about your journey. You said you start straight out of residency and open your practice, or what was that like?
Yeah, I did. So I learned about direct primary care my second year of residency. That's when I really delved into learning everything there was to learn about DPC. And I attended the conferences virtually because it was the pandemic during that time. And then I started following different docs on social media, getting to know them, visiting different people at their practices. And so that's how I really had the time to put a business plan together, research, interview doctors, and found out what worked for them and what didn't work for them. So I could really have some knowledge on how to do this straight from residency. Our goal in opening was to open, I say my husband and I, our goal was to open debt free. We saved a little piece of our my residency income, and we moonlighted. I moonlighted on the side. So I started off with 10 urgent care shifts. And then as the practice grew, I would just take away one shift at a time until I was able to quit urgent care once the practice was matching what urgent care was providing. And then we grew from there. So that was kind of our strategy, our low overhead strategy to really open the practice debt free straight from residency.
I actually love that. And I like how you kind of shared how you pulled back little by little as it matched ultimately what you were making. Tell me a little bit. I know we spoke briefly. Tell me a little bit about when you did start. You mentioned that the first 2 years, your strategy looked different than now. So talk about your beginning when you first opened.
Yeah, when I first opened, it's interesting. What I love about direct primary care and entrepreneurship in general is that what you imagine, just the flexibility that's required because it will continue to morph and change. And you as an individual continue to morph and change, right? And so when I first opened, I thought, oh, I want to be a solo or a micro practice. I don't want to have any team or staff. It'll just be me and automations. I'll have 500 members, at this starter price point, and that'll just be our family business, our DPC that I love. And that's what I thought I wanted to do when I first opened. And, as we started to grow and serve our members, which first we started off with our ideal member being busy professionals, typically 30s to 60s that are in the workforce or running businesses that just really want quicker care and don't want to wait the 3 to 6 months of an insurance-based practice here in Vegas. So that was our ideal client and still is on the individual side in our business. And as we began to serve them, I realized, first of all, we need to adjust the price point, right, to match the quality of care. So we did do that. And that started to shift and morph into a different ideal client, right, as the price point shifts. And then as we served more clients, or more members of our practice, I realized, okay, I don't want to serve 500 people with this amount of care that I plan to have and to run the business and then to bring on team. It's going to require for me to have a smaller patient panel compared to that traditional 500 so that I'm not in the business, the whole time. I'm able to be in the business while also working on the business and balancing those things. So the amount of members I thought I wanted for my panel has changed and morphed over time. And then over the first 2 years, we just focused on the retail side of things. Some people will call it individuals and families and entrepreneurs. And now in the last year, we've really shifted our focus. We still care for that population, but we've shifted our emphasis on the corporate side and working with businesses and their team, building health plans around DPC. So that's been a really fun thing to not only care for individuals, but to now go into businesses and see a whole team of people that are under our care. So it's been really rewarding to grow in that way.
There's a few things I definitely want to ask you, but I want to start first, still kind of holding on to the beginning route, so to speak. Tell me a little bit, what did that marketing strategy look like? How did you grow your individual base versus then we can talk about corporate, but I want to focus a little more on what was it like working more on that one-on-one side?
Yeah. On the one-on-one side, it was interesting because I opened the practice. My oldest daughter, Ava, was 2 years old, and my youngest daughter, Aaliyah, we did our ribbon cutting and opened our practice when she was 8 weeks old. So I had very little children. And so I didn't have a lot of time in that season to be boots to the pavement out in the community as much as someone who maybe doesn't have a newborn and a toddler, right? So I thought to myself, well, what can I do that can be powerful, that can reach many people, that where they can get to know me, get to know my personality, get to be educated on our model, while I can still be mommy here, right? And so that looked like social media. And I happen to be someone who really likes social media. I like to be on camera. I like to talk. So that felt like a really natural way for me to start. And so that's what we did. So Instagram was where I started, and Facebook and YouTube. So that's where I started, was really a social media strategy, which of course was low overhead. It was free at that time. I didn't have a team at that time doing my social media, but I couldn't be out in the community at that time, but I could push things from my cell phone. I could push buttons from my cell phone. I could press record on my iPhone. And that's how things really started for us. And once we surpassed 50 members, then the word of mouth started picking up. As we served those 50 members really well, I would ask them for a Google review, when it made sense to ask for that. That started building things up on the word of mouth side, because then people started joining, saying that they were either referred from a friend, or that's a member of our practice, or they saw our 5 stars on Google and read all these reviews. People would say, we Googled you and we looked for best doctor in Las Vegas or primary care doctor in Las Vegas, and you were the first one to pop up with all 5 stars. So those were the things that were really the most successful for us on the individual side.
So just to clarify, would you say about the first 50-ish members were from social media?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And then were you able to leverage social media and create maybe some kind of like email campaign, or did you use social media at all, or do you use it now to leverage to create an audience, an audience that you own?
So it took me some time to realize the importance of that. So yes, absolutely. We built an email list. It's really nice. I love that my Calendly, actually, anybody who schedules a meet and greet with me automatically are opted into our email list. So that's really nice, because most people will schedule meet and greets with us. On our social media platform, we always had places for them to join our email list. So yes, we are definitely doing that. Email marketing has been great for us, but I didn't do that early on because I didn't have necessarily the skill set or realize the importance of that. But now that we have a team that does our social media for us, that's definitely a big part of what they do, is the newsletter and sending that out and growing the email list.
I just wanted to ask, especially with the whole TikTok thing that happened recently that got shut down, even though it was less than 24 hours, it just kind of puts in perspective the importance of owning your leads and the people that are engaging with you. So I think it's kind of cool that y'all are investing in that now. So tell me how, now that we've kind of talked about the individuals, how does that differ working with corporate and trying to grow the corporate side of things with your practice?
Yeah, what I like about how we naturally did it, because of course I didn't script it out that way, like, oh, we're going to do, individuals the first 2 years, and then at year 2, that's when we're going to start doing corporate. I didn't have that in my business plan. It just grew and developed that way. One, because on our individual side, again, I said that my ideal member was a busy professional, 30s to 50s, entrepreneurs. So we started naturally attracting business owners, right? And so as they got to experience it, they'd be like, hey, I have an assistant. We'll just put her on the business card. Hey, I have a team of 3. We'll just put them on the business card. And so it started to really carve out what it looked like to work with businesses and their teams on a small scale. So that's what really started to lead us towards that direction. And then once we really had our system down, our scheduling, how we care for people, our templates, everything, like the system of Nspire primary care, once that was, I don't want to say perfected, because everything is a continuum, right? And always improving. But once we had our system polished, I will say that, then it made a lot of sense, instead of just focusing on one-to-one, we're now in a position where we're qualified and ready to work one to many. And with small, medium, and large businesses, we now have that sweat equity we've put in on individuals where we can have the confidence to say we can provide that 5-star service to a team. And so it's developed in that direction, kind of naturally and organically. So it's been really exciting.
That's really cool. How do you connect working with the corporate world versus the individual friend? What does that look like marketing wise?
Yeah. On the corporate side, again, that's the last year for us. So I'm going to continuously be learning what this looks like. But what I've experienced so far is much more networking with the decision makers, with the executive leaders. And so it's a lot of lunches. And for me, it's not these forced situations. It's just business owners that I really am interested in their business and getting to know them and seeing if they're a great referral partner for me to let Nspire primary care members know about. And then we go out to lunch and then I find out that they have a team and that their health insurance is going up, or that they would like to offer benefits to retain quality talent, but they haven't been able to afford traditional plans. So these conversations just develop, usually over lunches. Also, I put myself in rooms. I do very strategic networking. So I'm not a person, because I do still have little ones, I don't do a whole lot of networking, but I do very strategic networking. So I go to rooms where it's going to be executive leaders, typically a lot of women business owners in one room that have teams. And so I talk to them, I get their information, we schedule lunch. It's looked like a lot of that. And then I've had some organizations that are organizations of business owners with teams, with larger teams, that have invited me to come out and tell their business owners what they do and tell their organizations what they do over presentations. And so I've been able to present to different teams. And I've done lunch and learns as well. I've had a few business owners that said, hey, we have a monthly team meeting on this date. Can you just come and just tell my team about what you do? And then I'll let them know that we'll start offering the benefit to those that are interested. So it's looked like a lot of combination of those things, which I found to be really fun, really strategic and productive.
There's something you said that's a little off topic, but just not really. How did you find that balance? I know you said originally you thought you wanted a certain patient panel, you pulled back a little bit. What does that balance look like? Because I'll be honest, I'm not very good at that. So I'm just kind of curious, how have you navigated that?
Yeah, what I love is I had to figure out, sound corny, but like, what does my dream life look like? I had to really map that out. And for me, what that looked like is having a business that's really serving my mission of quality healthcare, but where I'm able to be a mom, where I'm able to be off weekends and evenings, where I'm not in the clinic Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, because I want to have time to have more flexibility and to run the business and other businesses with my other gifts and talents. I want to be able to go and speak and do the podcast and things like that. I have other things I'm called to do in addition to being a business owner and a physician. So how do I need to craft my schedule and my business to be able to have that result in that life, right? I'm able to be a homeschool family, right? I homeschool my kids some of the days of the week. So just things that I would have never been able to do if I was a traditional doctor, but I'm building my DPC around my dream life, not my dream life, trying to insert it and fit it into the DPC peg, if you will. So I had to just release myself from like hearing about how other doctors did their DPC and like how many members they have and what price they charge and how many hours they work. And instead just say, okay, what do I want it to look like for me and my family? And building it that way and learning from others, but still building it my way for my family, customizing it, right? Which is the whole point of DPC, is customized care. So it's a customized practice. So for me, I had to figure out, okay, which days of the week am I going to work? I'm not in the practice 5 days a week. What hours am I going to work? I'm not in the practice 8 hours when I am in the office. So just really structuring that and having good boundaries. And then also letting my members know, like as they join the practice, letting them know, like, these are the days I'm in the office physically. You have access Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but these are the days I'm remote. But you still have access to me and the team. This is this link to self-schedule. You don't need to call and try to schedule. Here's your link, self-schedule. It shows the availability. Reach out if you need to be seen sooner. We have urgent appointments. Just really letting people know, like, you have amazing access. But that doesn't require for the doctor to be miserable for them to have really high quality care. It also doesn't require the doctor to be 24/7 at all, that, to provide really high quality care. Those have been things that I just had to realize it doesn't have to look like other people say it has looked for them.
I love that. I absolutely love the word release. I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves, what we think something should look like because we heard somebody else is doing something. And I really like that. And that is one thing. And one of the common themes, and I probably say this in every episode now, you need to define success for yourself. And I feel like it's almost the theme of this whole entire podcast is like everyone's version of success is going to be different than the next. And I think that's where I often do feel clinicians and doctors in private practice get frustrated is because they're comparing themselves to the person next door and they feel like they're not succeeding. But I do love that you sat down and you had that conversation with yourself of what is my dream life and how can I make all what I'm doing kind of revolve more around that. And I think that's beautiful. The other thing I wanted to also point out is that you said you like educate, that you're educating your patients of what to expect. I think that's amazing because that really, I believe, would help pull some of that stress off of people that don't set those clear expectations since day one. And then they feel overwhelmed because they feel like the patients or the practice is running them instead of them running the patients and the practice. One question that also came to mind as you were speaking, it sounds like you kind of have some kind of support team that helps you do certain tasks. So can you talk a little bit about when you incorporated a team and what does that team look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, Nspire Primary Care has grown to a team of 5 now, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. It's been so beautiful. So when I opened the practice, I was the only person in the practice, and I like to say I opened with me and automations, me with Calendly, with Zoom, and with automations, with my website and my EMR. So that was how we started. And while I was moonlighting at urgent care at the beginning, I really hit it off with one of the MAs. And I told her, oh, when I'm in a position to hire, I'm going to reach out to you and see if you want to join us. And she's like, please do. And so when we were at a point where I could afford to bring someone on part-time, I couldn't afford to bring her on full-time at the time, but I was like, I could afford her a couple days a week. Let me just see if she wants to come on my 2 busiest days, Monday, Friday. And I also had a 1-room suite. And so I was like, and what I need her to do, she can do virtually. So let me see if she wants to work virtually Monday and Friday. And that was perfect for her. She was able to work at urgent care the other days of the week. And then she worked with us Monday, Friday, and she was a college student. So it just really worked well. So that's how we brought on our first person. At the time, she was local to Las Vegas, but she works remotely, but she would come and do things in person as needed. Like if I needed her to drop things by the office, or if we had a pound the pavement season where she would go to different practices and let them know about our practice, she would do that. Or if we had booths in the community, she'd join me there. So it was kind of a hybrid, but all of her clinical things were remote. So that worked really well. Now she's fully remote now that she moved, but yeah, that worked really well. So that's how I met my first practice assistant, we call her. We call her a practice assistant just because she helps with all the things that don't require the physician, from ordering refills to faxes to all of the communication, anything that doesn't require the physician, she's able to help with, right? And we work together as a team. That was the first person. And then the second thing, the social media I told you was like our biggest, marketing drive on the individual side. So that became like a part-time job, posting, like filming, posting, editing, repurposing. And so I was like, okay, now's the time to make an investment into that. So we did invest in a virtual assistant for social media. She's been great. She does all of our marketing and graphics and newsletter and podcast and just all of the social media. So that's the second person I added. And then once we started getting busier and adding more members to our practice, first practice assistant, she is also a college student. So she worked 3 days of the week. So then we hired another practice assistant to cover the other days of the week, virtual. So we have the 2 of them that work together. So that's how we became a team of 4. And then my husband is on, as we grew the assistants and, had payroll and put myself on payroll and had our practice assistants on payroll, the operations side became busy. So my husband is the COO of our practice. And so his role on the operations side started to grow. So he is on the operations. So that's our full team that we've grown to now. And in the next season, we'll start adding additional physicians or providers and growing from there as well.
Tell me, I know I forgot you had a podcast, but let's talk about that real quick. What made you start your podcast? Who's your audience? And has that been a marketing strategy for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost two separate things. So the She Inspires podcast is it's mostly because I have such an interest in entrepreneurship and women in business and how they grow and scale their businesses and how they do it successfully and what it's looked like for them and what jewels and pearls. And I found myself as I be out networking in the community, I would have all these amazing conversations with women entrepreneurs. And I would just be getting all these gems over these lunches and in these rooms. And I was like, man, if I could just like record these and like ask you specific questions, not only would that like help me along my journey, that would help other people. So that's where the She Inspires podcast was really born because I was like, these women are amazing. They have these incredible companies in all different fields. But business is similar, even though your industry can be totally different. Marketing, like the basics of how to grow and scale a business and take care of a customer or a patient in our case, it doesn't change that much. So there were so many pros I was learning by just asking them questions. So that's the She Inspires podcast, where I ask busy professional entrepreneur women how they've grown and scaled their businesses and like the pros, the cons, the work-life balance, all of that. So that's like my baby project that I really, really love. And it's actually unintentionally, if you will, has fed into a lot of my speaking engagements. So a lot of people, a lot of women's conferences and even medical conferences that have reached out for me to speak have been because they've listened to me speak on the She Inspires podcast, which is something I really enjoy doing. So that kind of became a lead magnet for that unintentionally.
And so, just out of curiosity, the women you interview, are they local to Las Vegas or are they just kind of national?
Both. So it started off only being Las Vegas business owners because I started off with it being an in studio interview. And then I started having people email me asking, hey, can I be a guest? Or their assistant emailing me saying, hey, my so and so would like to be a guest. And they were in other places. So it kind of again forced me to pivot towards a digital platform. So now we do it remote and online, on a digital platform. But again, it kind of morphed into that through the demand.
Tell me, what would you tell somebody that's just starting? What advice would you give to them?
I would give them the advice of just be clear about what your goals are, what your dream life looks like, how your DPC will be able to be built around that. Be flexible with what you want it to look like what you want it to look like today. Wonderful. Do and apply the things of how you imagine it today. But if you notice that things are changing and you need to adjust pricing, or you need to adjust who your ideal member is, or you need to adjust your marketing strategies, like don't feel you have to stick so tightly to what you initially said you wanted it to do and be. And it's okay for your mission and your vision to evolve as you evolve. So yeah, that's really what I would say. I would also say keep your overhead low. I know that's going to be one of those things people hear a lot, but that's been one of the best pieces of advice with the lean startup that I have kept. That has just really helped my business to be profitable early, not to be stressed or strapped or, grasping for people who aren't my ideal fit, because the overhead was just so low in our business where we could take the time to grow through quality instead of quantity, which has allowed it to really grow into a business I really love instead of serving people who are not my ideal fit just because we're pressed to bring people in as fast as possible. So yeah, I wouldn't be afraid of slower growth. I think that's another thing in DPC that I hear so much is like, okay, you have a DPC. How much are you charging? How many people do you have? Like that's like this equation people try to estimate a person's success on. But I've learned that it can be a much lower number at a different price point. And with the joy doesn't necessarily come from what's your price, where you located, how many members. So to just open the mind to that too.
I love that. Now, another question popped into my mind that would be great to ask you. What about someone that's interested in maybe doing the social media route? What advice do you have for that person that may be interested in how to grow their social media, how to leverage that free opportunity? What would you say to them?
I'd again go back to looking at who they're trying to attract, right? Because I'm now dipping my toes more into LinkedIn because we're on the corporate side and my CEOs and executives and decision makers are there, right? So who are you trying to attract? At the time, I was trying to attract individuals and business owners because I wanted them as an individual, right? And so they scroll on Instagram, they scroll on Facebook. Some of my younger ones, or I shouldn't say younger, but scroll on TikTok, right? And so I had to think, like, where are they at who I'm specifically trying to attract? Where do they binge content? Where do they, when they're bored, where do they scroll? And that's why I was on social media, but also social media, I would say, is one of my strengths, right? Like, I am natural on camera. It's a skill I had to develop, but I enjoy it. Let me put it like that. And so if you hate it and you're very awkward and it's also not where your people are at, then that's not going to be it's not a one size fit all strategy. Just because Nspire Primary Care did really well on Instagram doesn't mean every DPC owner should just go start an Instagram account and expect that 50 plus members are going to flow in. It's, again, it all should be customized, right? So I would say, figure out your why and where and who, and then create a really strategic social media strategy around that. And then be flexible as you learn and get feedback, right? Over time. But also know that it takes time to get that feedback. Don't expect to make 2 videos. You don't get members and then you stop. Like, you have to build the muscle strategically too and keep going for a while.
The consistency. How did you come up with kind of your topics of conversation on your videos for social media?
Yeah, I love that question. I am all about work smarter, not harder. So I still do offer free 15-minute meet and greets. Those would literally be my content. So I would say wouldn't have a script when I'd go into my meet and greets. I'd say, "Hi, I'm Dr. Jade. What questions do you have about our practice? This time is yours." Boom. That's it. That's all I would say. And then from there, they would ask questions. I would have my pen and I would write down all their questions they asked. Then I would say, I'd answer their questions. I'd click the off button. I'd click my Instagram button, and then I'd go live. And I'd say, "Hey guys, let me answer the commonly asked questions of the week." And it'd be all the meet and greet questions from that week, the most popular ones, right? Which is, do you take insurance? Do you do pap smears? Like, it was the same thing, but I would re-educate. And then I'd tell my, assistant, "Hey, we're going to create content around all these questions, repurpose this into a newsletter, etc." So it would be the questions of others. It would also be the questions of my patients, right? Like, I'd have patients ask questions in the office. I'm like, "Oh, that's a good question. Okay, let me, make a little video on that or make some content on that." So yes, I figured out early on that people don't care about what you care about. They care about what they care about. And that took me some time. When I first opened, I was like, "Oh, let me tell them about this and about that." And no one cares, right? But they ask you what they care about. And so then educating on that.
I absolutely love it. I'm glad I asked that question because that answer was not one I expected. I'm like, that's very smart of you. I was like, I love it. So my last question would be, what advice would you give to someone that feels like they're not where they want to be, that maybe open a practice, they're kind of struggling with marketing? What would you say to that person?
I would say to not try to reinvent the wheel. Like, I'm all about customizing and putting your own flavor on things. However, the nuts and bolts of it, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I would say, find mentors. Obviously, if you're not in the Facebook groups and things like that, but the conferences, right? DPC Summit is a great place to meet all the people that are in the community that have done it ahead of you. So my biggest strategy is always, like, someone has done this successfully. Let me learn from them. And if they're not the person to teach you, someone else will. Somebody will be generous with their time. I know that I will be, because so many have been to me. And so that's how we pay it forward to each other. But yeah, reach out to people who have done it successfully. If you see a doctor who has hired 2 or 3 people and their team looks like they're doing really well, say, "Hey, would you be available for a 15-minute Q&A, or can I shoot you an email with a couple questions?" Or, don't just be a person that takes. Say, "Hey, are you going to the conference?" And then when you see them there, say hello and ask a couple questions. But just get involved and try to be a giver. Give as much as you take, and give to others as you learn, and then ask for those ahead of you what they know. But I wouldn't try to reinvent the wheel. I've done well because a big part of it is because I have asked questions to those ahead of me, the good, the bad, the ugly. If I saw that they were taking out big loans, 3 years later, I'd be like, "Hey, how did that decision go?" If I saw people that were buying big lasers and doing a lot of aesthetics, I'd be like, "Hey, how's your overhead? How's your profit margins?" Like, just asking questions. So yeah.
I love that. One thing I want to kind of point out again right now that you just said you kind of followed up and you did your research. You said that in the very beginning that when you were still in residency, you knew this was the direction you wanted to go, and you started doing research early on. You started learning early on. And that is something else I've noticed with other doctors that have been quote unquote successful, whatever success is to you, right? They did the research, they took the time, they probably took some time, either whether it was marketing or learning, and they ended up feeling like they did pretty well because they kind of felt like they had a grasp on how they wanted to position themselves and who they wanted to reach out to and work with. And so I do like that, do your research, learn your market, know what your market is like, and kind of go from there. But this was such a great talk. I'm super thankful. Thank you so much for joining today. Is there anything else that you'd want to share with the audience?
Yeah, no, if anyone wants to continue to keep in contact, I'm on Instagram at Dr. Jade MD. Our practice page is at Nspire Primary Care, no I in front of Nspire. If anyone wants to reach out or email me, you can email me through our website at inspireprimarycare.com. The contact page comes right to my email. Again, no I in front of Nspire. But yeah, keep in touch. Happy to continue to help anyone in any way that I can. And I'm really thankful for the DPC community. It's been just a beautiful journey, not without any challenges, right? But it's been definitely fulfilling. And so I'm thankful.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. Thank you to Dr. Jade, who brought so many great nuggets today, everything from social media to how to work with employers. And also, if this is your first time listening, you can also follow us at the Clinician's Atelier and go to the cliniciansatelier.com. We have a sales and marketing academy. I will be releasing I Need Patients yesterday. Make sure to check it out. We'll go over a lot of different ways that you can market naturally, just like Dr. Jade spoke about. Find what is natural to you and how do you create a strategy that works for your practice and for your natural sales style. We also have a free little quiz on the website that says, what's my natural sales style? So if you want to go take that quiz, go to the website, www.thecliniciansatelier.com.